Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 89 of Into the Necrosphere. Rejoining me today on the podcast is Merciful Kate, aka Katy Irizarry, senior publicist for Season of Mist Records, one of my favorite record labels. Katy has been in and around the metal scene for a vast majority of her life and has been a contributing writer to several publications, a podcast host. She has her finger in various pies. One thing that is also for certain about her is she doesn't shy away when it comes to sharing an opinion. So if you enjoyed the conversations that I've had with people like Alan Averill, you are going to love this one. We touched on everything from the music industry through to vaccinations, through to the dreaded C word, cancel culture. Yeah, really fun conversation, which will be coming your way imminently. Before we get to that, a couple of the usual housekeeping announcements. If you're new to the show, then elbow drop the subscribe button on wherever you listen to or watch podcasts on, whether that's YouTube, Stitcher, or Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. I post new episodes every Tuesday for free, and all I ask in return is that you share, leave a like, leave a comment, or leave a review. And also, if you really like the show and you want to rep your Into the Necrosphere love publicly in both a grim cult and stylish way, then head over to the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store and pick yourself out a jogger, a hoodie, a t-shirt, etc., etc. As I've said many times before, I'll never be clanging my little Patreon beggar's cup asking you for donations, but I do use the money that I make out of the Teespring store to finance some of the more lavish extravagances that you see before you, whether it be the green screen behind me or this fancy Shure microphone, which probably needs an upgrade of its USB cable at some point soon, because that's starting to go. So, you know, give me some love on Teespring, and who knows, I might be able to make that happen. Stick around as well. After my conversation with Katy, I'm going to be talking about the new Bizarrekult record, and I will also be doing a bit of news. And depending on the mood that I'm in, I'll also share with you who my next guest is going to be, because it's a big one. So for now, strap yourselves in. This is Katy Irizarry. So welcome back. As we get started, I'm going to crack my Brooklyn lager. After Camden Hells didn't contact me with a mega money and also mega beer sponsorship, I've decided to switch brands. So, but how's things been going with you? I think the last time we spoke like on a podcast was pre-pandemic.
Actually, it was during the pandemic, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was.
Oh like shit! You're right.
Yeah,
we spoke right as it sort of kicked in, because we spent a little bit talking about you know, how it had impacted the music industry, etc. And I definitely want to talk about that a bit again today. But yeah, I'll shut up. How have you been?
You know, I've been good. I've been hanging in there. I mean, work's been busy, but I like busy because that means things are going well. You know, because I think last time we spoke, we had a bit of a lull. You know, tours were canceled and albums were put on hold. So now it's really exciting to see things back to normal in that sense, and having a ton of releases coming up and a ton of tours coming up. So it gives a little bit of a sense of normalcy.
Yeah, and I mean, it's I guess the other thing that has happened is it's kind of forced you to get very creative and probably be involved in things that maybe you wouldn't have done had the pandemic not hit. One of which was the Vride movie that you were pretty heavily involved in. So tell me a bit more about that.
That was really cool. I mean, I have to say, that was really all Jarla from Vride. That was his vision. And he really did this all himself. I mean, he obviously had help with Havard Nesbo, the director, but he was the one who really coordinated. He was the one that had the vision. And, you know, this wouldn't have existed without him. And basically what we did was kind of like a music video per song for every song on the album that came out, Wild Northwest. And he did it very like David Lynchian style. There's a lot of, it's kind of one of those things where each chapter, it's like, I don't know where this is going. Where is this going now? And it keeps you on your toes. And what I really think was cool is at the ending, everyone kind of has a different interpretation of it. I mean, for me, I thought it was kind of a nod to Vride's history, as them starting as Windeer and ending with death and tragedy. And I felt it was that. You know, but that was not necessarily what they were going for. And that's something I think you should, I know we have to reschedule you and Jarla because I had gotten mixed up twice, but he's on holiday now. When he gets back, I think you definitely need to talk to him and
Oh yeah, no,
talk
I'd
to him
love to.
about that. Yeah.
I
And we
would.
have a screening actually coming up. We haven't announced it yet, but I feel like by the time this is out, we probably will. And even if we don't, then hey, whatever. You get to hear the scoop early, but we actually,
exclusive.
yeah, we have a screening coming up in Philly on September 25th, a matinee at Kung Fu Necktie. So,
Oh, that's fucking awesome.
yeah.
One thing that I was amazed by with, with the whole, the way that Variety album was released is how, sort of broadly accepting of it, the whole black metal scene was. I mean, it's kind of like, I feel like had that happened 15 or 20 years ago, they'd been up in arms. How dare you sell out, commercializing the scene. It kind of speaks volumes, I think, to how much more sort of open and accepting the genre and the scene generally has gotten, right?
Yeah, that's true. And it's funny because I still see both sides of the spectrum. And this was not one of those cases. Usually with our more melodic bands, like say Der Weg eine Freiheit or Garia or Sylvain, you get those black metal purists who get really, Tombs, like they get all up in arms, like, yo, this is a little melodic or experimental. This isn't pure. Get it away from me. But I'm happy to say that we see far more people embracing this side of black metal and really embracing its evolution and understanding that this really, by gatekeeping it, it's never really going to grow, and it's never, and some people like that, but for me, I want to see our genre grow. I want to see our genre be accepted more widely. I want to see it succeed. I want to see the people doing this make money. I guess other people don't really see it that way though.
No, I think there's unfortunately that kind of fringe Reddit dweller will always exist that kind of, wants to keep the band has to only release their albums on cassette. Any more than 200 followers on Facebook and they're immediately false. But I mean, like you mentioned Tombs. I mean, seriously, who is more necro than Mike?
Mike is the man. Mike is a New York City, East Coast black metal legend representing American black metal. And that's the thing too. Europeans don't like American black metal. It's very interesting. It could sound super Norwegian and super European, but there's also this kind of like territorial gatekeeping I've noticed. And there's this one guy who always pops up. I'm not going to say his name, but he's always popping up on like Tombs and Gadia posts, all this hipster stuff. And he has like a total seizure. And I find it entertaining personally. I think it's funny. And I'm also like, well, thank you for these comments because you've helped improve our engagement. More people will see this post.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your comments. The fact that you don't like it means we're doing something right.
Exactly.
I must confess, I've never quite understood that regionalism and that sort of, kind of, why would you not want to? I mean, we'll talk about, probably political stuff in a second, but I'm no globalist. But at the same time, what's one of the best things about black metal for me is how kind of far and wide the scene has spread. And what I really love about it is I feel like each country, each region sort of has its very own distinct flavor of black metal. You kind of have that slightly off-center zaniness that you get from the Australian scene. I feel like in America, it's like black metal in the heat. It's like there's a southern fried vibe to a lot of black metal, and like bands like Cobalt were like a forerunner of that, in my opinion. And what's been so fucking cool is to see how many other bands have come up, doing similar but really interesting, really unique stuff. And then obviously you've got things all over Europe. France sounds very unique. The UK scene sounds very unique. That's part of what I love about the scene. It almost feels like the countries are, whether consciously or subconsciously, in competition with each other. Because every year I also feel like that benchmark just gets pushed and pushed and pushed that much higher.
I agree with you 100%. And, this is something I experienced even as a kid, just getting into black metal, because my gateway was Cradle of Filth. I actually was talking about this yesterday with one of my friends. The first time I heard Cradle of Filth was on an episode of Viva La Bam Margera from Jackass's show. And it was her Ghost in the Fog. And I remember just like, wow, what is this? It's so cool. And waiting for the credits at the end of the episode and figuring out what song it was and downloading it on, I don't think it was Napster at that point. I think it was like LimeWire.
I was just about to say, how dare you?
I know. I was a music downloader. I have a funny story about that too, actually. Not to go off on a tangent, but when I was a kid, my dad was obsessed with Napster, and he would download anything I wanted. He taught me how to use it and everything. And when Napster was being sued, he downloaded every Metallica and Madonna song ever because he was so mad that he wasn't going to get free music anymore. And looking back now as someone working in the industry, I'm like, okay, I kind of get where they were coming from. But it's funny because it was such a new thing and no one really kind of understood what downloading was really doing to the artist. And I just thought that was so funny for him to be so spiteful about it. And now, of course, it's like, yeah, you literally are like stealing a CD off a shelf. And thankfully we've adapted to streaming and downloading legally through other services like Apple and Spotify and things like that. But I always remember that. He was, I don't even like Metallica. I was downloading every song of theirs ever just to screw them because they're getting rid of Napster. But
yeah.
Yeah,
I spoke about this on my show actually a little while back, and I wanted to bring this up to you. I don't know whether you ever listen to any of the news rants that I do. Very like not very few, but like I do know there's a bit of a drop off, and I kind of, because there's that drop off when the news comes up, I know I can let rip on a lot of things. So I was talking about this interview that I can't remember who had done it, but someone had done it with Derek Green. And I love Derek. I'm actually probably in the minority here, but I personally think Derek era Sepultura, I personally enjoy more than I like old Sepultura. As much as I have a lot of love for Beneath the Remains and Arise and Chaos AD, I think Derek is a great front man. I think he does the old songs justice, and I think that the new stuff they've done with him over the last decade, 2 decades, I think is great. That being said, he was complaining in the interview about Spotify and saying it's unfair that bands aren't getting more for what they for the number of streams that they do. And I was thinking about it, and I sort of said to myself, okay, well, hold on, yeah. Has anybody who says this, because I get it's not an ideal situation, you're getting less money than you would like, it's certainly not, these aren't the SoundScan days, but has anybody ever stopped and actually looked at how much money Spotify actually make? So if before people start quoting top line, gross revenue figures, rather than saying, hey, by the way, they actually only made in the last 4 quarters, and someone could correct me on this if I'm wrong, but in the last 4 quarters, they make 3 losses and 1 quarter where they made $14 million in terms of net profit. So then you start thinking to yourself, okay, how much more money is there to go around then? Again, I get bands would like to make more money. And I kind of, the point that I was making when I was talking about this was, it feels to me like unless somebody has a very realistic and sober, or takes a very realistic and sober view of this rather than getting emotional about it, I don't feel like the scene's going to be able to go forward in any way and actually find solutions that'll be sustainable in the long run. Because simply saying we should get more money, I mean, that's not going to mean jack shit. So I was keen to kind of get your take on that. I mean, and I'm more than happy to be told I'm full of shit, yeah, and I'm completely wrong. But I'm coming from a place where I would love to be able to help, and I won't be able to, but ultimately, I'm solution orientated, yeah, rather than going fuck apps, fuck Spotify and Coke bars and Tidal and all these shit places.
You clearly know a lot more about it than I do, because I've never quite looked into how much money exactly Spotify makes. And I've heard for sure that they don't pay fairly. I think they pay like 0.001 cent, like a spin or something.
I think it's 0.008 cents or something.
Yeah, it's something like that. And obviously interest affects this, and you're going to have an artist like, let's say, Sepultura, that really aren't going to get that many spins, but then you'll have a band like, say, Bad Wolves, who are very mainstream and modern and will be able to actually reap the benefits. And the thing is, though, I think what people are losing sight of is maybe like a pop artist or a hip hop artist might be getting more spins, but at the end of the day, the average metal fan is still going to be buying more merchandise than the average pop or hip hop fan. They're still going to buy vinyl. They're still the main demographic collecting vinyl. They're still the main, you're not really going to see anyone walking around like a Cardi B shirt or a Lady Gaga shirt, but metalheads are wearing a band shirt almost every day. It's the uniform, so we do spend our money. So I guess I can't really speak so much on whether or not it's fair, because I don't know enough about it. From what I've heard, it seems that platforms like Spotify, or at least artists, don't feel they're being paid fairly and they should be paid more. If that is the case, I would like to see that improve. from what I hear, Apple Music does pay a little bit more fairly. There's always charts that come out, and I am not a numbers person. Everything confuses me. I see charts, I see grids. I don't know what these numbers mean. So I'm just told it's bad. Maybe it's bad. But as someone who, I can't really say I've done my own real research or even truly understand how the money side of things works, I can't truly weigh in there. But what I can say is, yeah, that does suck that maybe you're not getting so much from streaming, but I do believe it makes up for itself because metal fans are way more likely to show up at your merch table at your concert and buy everything on that table.
Yeah, and I also feel like, if you think about the what happened during at the peak of the pandemic, anytime that Bandcamp did a special day where they were going to do no commission or whatever the case may be. I mean, people flocked to the site, and I do feel like the metal scene really does. People can complain about how much they're getting, but at the end of the day, I do feel the metal scene does more than most. To your point about we buy merchandise. I mean, I've just I had my promotion that I told you about formalized yesterday.
Oh, congratulations!
Thank you. My boss the other day was like, she constantly does this, like, what T-shirt are you wearing, Jackie? It's like, is it another one of those crazy band T-shirts? I mean, I was on calls today with this Dark Throne T-shirt. So it definitely is the uniform, but it's like, we buy more merch. We definitely try and do more to support the bands. I mean, like you say, I'm not going to run around with a Megan Thee Stallion T-shirt and anything like that. But equally, I feel Spotify and Tidal and Qobuz and Deezer and all of these things. It was kind of making the best of a bad situation, because it was either going to be it's Napster and everything is free forever, or somebody monetizes this and at least you get something.
I agree, because it's not a perfect fix or solution. It's not perfect, but it definitely has improved things. And again, it's fair. Obviously, if you're not getting as many spins as someone else, you're not going to get as much money. And it has to be divided that way, because I can't pick and choose and say, well, I only want to spend $9.99 a month and only want to access these bands. You're going to get access to every single artist that is on that platform. So, I mean, how do you really quantify it more fairly than that? And maybe there is more money that can be made or divvied up. Again, I don't really know enough about the situation to really say, but what I can at least speak on is that metalheads are aware of this, and probably more aware than the average music fan or mainstream music fan. And we do try to make it a point to buy those concert tickets and buy those merch items. And it goes back to the band, whether or not they see it. And it's not the same. But here's the other thing too, I don't think people realize, like, I feel like people and a lot of bands feel they're entitled to the same money that bands were getting back in like 1985. Yeah. But there's more bands out there at the same time. It's an oversaturated market. Just like we were saying about genres evolving, there's more genres than there were in 1985. There's more bands. Bands are more accessible. So I don't think even if physical format was still the primary way that people consume music, and even if it weren't for these streaming services, I still don't think bands would be making that much money to begin with, because when you have that much of a competitive market, there's only so much you can do. There's only so many records one person can buy. There's only so many concerts one person could buy tickets for. I mean, maybe not me. I go to too many, maybe. But so I think too, maybe bands don't necessarily see the bigger picture and maybe don't realize that it's a little bit deeper than that, because there's a lot of other factors playing into this now where it's going to affect your finances. That's just a part of it. That's one part that's causing you to not make as much money as you would have 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you mentioned shows. I know I spoke to, I think it was Jared from Earthrot, and he was saying, like, the concern that he was having was obviously they brought that record out, which was outstanding. And he said, like, the problem is, even if we book our tour for 2021, he said everything is so backed up now in terms of the venues. We're probably, given the size of our band, we're probably going to be at the back of the line. We'll probably get a date maybe 9 months in from when we would like to book that date for, and again, that's just a symptom of how many bands there actually are. Conversely, obviously, one thing that fucking pisses me off no end is when you talk to particularly some old salty dog who's like, oh, there's nothing coming out that I'm interested in anymore. All new music sucks. the worst was, and I'm wearing a Dark Throne t-shirt, but Nocturno Culto saying, the black metal scene has lost its power. I was like, come on, mate. Come on. I'm a big fan of Hate Them. I like everything up to the Underground Resistance and probably Circle the Wagons. I'm very on board for. You've taken a bit of a dive after that, but just don't be a prick about this, and cast dispersions at a genre that, in my view, is more fucking vibrant than ever. I mean, you cannot look at what came out last year and tell me, the scene sucks. It's busted. It's lost its power. I mean, the last Eclipse album as an example. The last, I'm trying to think, Selbst, Aversi Humanitatis, and just one thing after the other. I mean, you've sent me a bunch of fucking cool stuff. It's just like, I don't know where people are coming up with the ideas, but they're just cranking out one great record after the other.
That's the beauty of having, I think, so many, because now that the scene has gotten bigger, you have so many different diverse styles and ideas, and that's why we're able to evolve and have so many incredible albums. Because I do feel there was maybe a lull, I would say, in that weird uncomfortable period of like between like 2007 and like 12, you know what I'm saying, like when new metal starts kind of going away and black metal starts becoming more mainstream. I think that was a really weird time for music, and I think there was a lot of bands maybe trying to keep up with modernizing and where music stood then versus where it was going at the time. And I will say there were years where I'm like, there's some good albums out there, but not like great ones. But in the past, like maybe like 8 or 9 years, or maybe less, a little bit less than that, I would say every year I'm like, whoa, I can't narrow this list down at the end of the year to 10. There's like 30 albums that I think are fantastic. And there's a lot of people, I think the thing is, and again, it's just like it's a crime to me that music is more accessible now than ever, and there are people who just don't even seek it out. They really believe there's no good music out there because they're not seeking it out. They're not listening to new music. They're just listening to the same Mayhem albums over and over again. They're still listening. They probably don't even listen to the new Mayhem records, and they probably just write them
that's
off.
all garbage to them as well. Yeah,
exactly. So it's like, I can't take people like that seriously, because if you're coming up to me and saying there's no good music out there, you just seem ignorant. You just seem like you haven't even tried to listen. How can you call? And it's funny because people like that will say, well, you're a poser because you like Tombs and they're not pure. And it's like, you're a poser because you've not listened to an album that's come out since 1995.
I'm about to say you're a poser because you don't like Tombs. So fuck you.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I completely agree with you. And again, Mayhem are a great example. I personally think they're making the best music of their career right now. Demon was fucking awesome. I loved Esoteric Warfare. I loved Ordo at KO. They make challenging, interesting music. And I have a lot of respect for bands that have been at this for a while and can kind of continue to push the envelope. I mean, Tombs just put out their best record probably ever, in my opinion. And what I kind of feel like it's an attitude thing as well. When you talk to Mike, he's not sitting saying, all of the new black metal coming out is garbage. The guy is still genuinely interested and curious about music. And I think that's what keeps him great. Like Shane Embury is another example. Shane Embury, in all of his myriad bands, continues to turn out one fucking classic after the other. And that's because he's still a fan of music. I think sometimes people also get so jaded by music. Like think about, Kerry King, when he started doing interviews and it was, this band sucks and that band sucks and he never had a good word to say about anybody. What happened to his musical output around about the same time?
I mean, I used to have my own podcast. It's since been canceled, but I mean, that's fine. It was called
Canceled, or did
no,
you say
it
something
was just
controversial?
there was no more money, so that was
all right. Okay.
Yeah, no, it was a financial decision. In any case, there was also mix-ups. It's a whole corporate thing, but the bottom line is it wasn't canceled for bad reasons. It was just canceled for financial ones. But what was I saying? Oh, so on my podcast, when I was hosting it, called Last Words on the Pit, there's still episodes available. You can hear my biggest rant that I would go on all the time, and I'm now taking it to your podcast, was Slayer, because they are the biggest offenders of gatekeeping and holding back new bands. The biggest, I mean, to me, they toured until they retired, which, let's be real, that doesn't really mean anything these days. As soon as shit opens back, I'm sure in 2022, 2023, we're going to see more Slayer shows. So whatever. But every tour they'd gone on, they toured more than any other band. they never brought out new, fresh, young talent. Never. And even the very last tour that they did, I mean, that's the opportunity I feel for you to finally say, you know what, we're done, but we're going to have these other bands carry our torch and bring out Power Trip or bring out Gate Creeper or something like that, and show people newer, more exciting, younger bands, and let your audience now discover something new. And they never did that. And you're right. And the same thing in interviews. I mean, Kerry King was constantly, oh, there's no good new music. And it's just like, what are you doing, man? And then it also promotes the same attitude that we're seeing. It's like a vicious cycle. And it's one thing I really resent bands like King Diamond, opposite. Every time I see King Diamond, you know, last time I saw him, he had out like Idle Hands, and even Uncle Acid, while they're not necessarily young or new, they're newer. They came out in the past decade. They're not necessarily known on the same scale as King Diamond. I mean, it's awesome. Every time I see him, he has these fresh blood or more modern bands out with him. Metallica, same thing. I mean, they took out Baroness, and they've taken out Volbeat before Volbeat became big. But Slayer, they're not cool, man. They're not cool. Even Anthrax is bringing out Municipal Waste. Like, all the big four did their part, but except for Slayer.
Yeah. No, I'll always be a huge fan of everything up to and including Seasons in the Abyss. And I've got a couple of songs on Divine Intervention I really like. And I love Tom. I always think he's one of the coolest frontmen ever. I just have many, many great memories of him, both meeting him in person and seeing him live. But that attitude has just always rubbed me the wrong way. I could never get behind it. It's like Chaos AD. I remember him running Chaos AD down in a Guitar World magazine, and it's like, I just thought to myself, and then it's been repeated since. Every single time a band talks about how shit the scene is, they always bring out their worst music. The Lost Satyricon, complete garbage. And right before they brought it out, Satyr was going on about it. This is going to be a step change in the genre, blah, blah, blah. It's like, you are so far behind where the genre is right now with your fucking bullshit Mike Clink production and your stupid saxophone playing and all of your crap that you're including there. It's, yeah. This is why I have to run an independent podcast, because I tend to run my mouth so much that there's probably a whole load of bands I could never have on the show.
I'm laughing about this because I worked that album.
Oh, really?
At the time I was doing indie PR with John Freeman, and we were doing with Napalm. And I'm laughing because I will not say who, but an editor of a pretty big magazine, when he was serviced the album, wrote back, and it was called Deep Calleth Upon Deep. And he said it was dirt calleth upon dirt.
It was such a load of shit.
It was so bad. It was so bad.
And again, this is like, I'm on board with the changes and sound. Like, I'm not one of these people that goes, everything beyond the Shadow Throne is rubbish. Like, I love Rebel Extravaganza. Actually, one of my favorite Satyricon records is Now Diabolical. I think it's superb. It has my favorite Satyricon song on, which is To the Mountains. But Deep Calleth One Deep, I was like, it's one thing to put out a record that sounds as lazy as this garbage, but then to turn around and say that it's going to be a step change for the genre, I mean, that really sticks in my craw.
No, I feel like At the Gates is making step changes for the genre, but I don't necessarily think that Satyricon is in that. But look, at the same time, I appreciate a band that takes risks and does step out of their comfort zone, because I think there's too many bands that get stuck in that comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I think it's better to try to break out of it and experiment and fail than to just stay there and stay stagnant. I would actually prefer that. I mean, I agree that album was extremely disappointing, especially for me to be like, I'm working a Satyricon album, and to hear it and be like, oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. But so I at least respect them for trying.
I would agree with you there.
Yeah.
I would agree with you there, specifically because I have criticized bands in the past for going on autopilot, like the last and Nathrak. And again, said this many times, I know I'm in the minority on this. I love everything excluding this last record. This last record to me was just total autopilot stuff. And they've got the album cover with a pig with dicks for noses, and it's like, oh, come on, man! Like, this is. The music is lame, and then you've got the stupid fucking attempted Marilyn Manson style shock as your album cover. And what I couldn't understand is, why is everyone gobbling this up so much? This is like the Emperor's New Clothes. As a matter of fact, it's like when Emperor brought out Prometheus. Like, how can you call this great? It's garbage. But anyway,
I did like that album. I am definitely in the majority. I think most people did like that record, but I do understand what you're saying. There's certain bands for me I kind of like when they don't depart too much from their sounds. I will agree the album artwork was hilarious, but at the same time, I don't think a band like that should be doing funny artwork, and I don't think it was meant to be funny. But
that's the thing, though. To me, it was inadvertent comedy. Like, there's nothing dangerous to me about that. Like, and that's the thing. Like, especially with black metal, I need a degree of like true convincing danger. That's true. I would. If I take we spoke about Mayhem earlier. Like, you see when you see them play live, and that intro that they play of Wolf's Lair Abyss comes on, and there's just like this blue light on stage, and the whole stage setup is there, and then these guys come on stage. They look fucking badass. They have the attitude on stage. Every single song they play is performed pristinely well, but there's this real sense of menace to everything that they do. Like, that to me is how black metal should sound, and how it should be represented as well.
Yeah, visually for sure too. Black metal is a very visual genre, and there is something you have to have that dark, ominous kind of look, and that translates both to how you present yourself, but also everything behind it, your artwork, your music videos, your photos. So I agree, when you have a genre that's this serious, and you put out something that I think was intended to even be serious, which also kind of makes it worse in the scale of things, and it's just silly, and it just looks like fraternity dude bro level humor. It does take something away to me. And I know black metal fans right now are clutching their pearls like, oh my God, she just said that style matters. Yeah, it kind of does. I mean, let's be real.
Yes.
How would you feel if Satyricon was walking out on stage in basketball shorts?
Exactly.
Like, you can't do that.
I completely agree with you. Anyone that says style doesn't matter is full of shit. They don't know what they're talking about, and or they are just being dishonest.
I agree.
If Attila walked out on stage looking like Fred Durst, how would I feel about that?
Thank you. You can't do that. You cannot do that. I mean, there's certain genres that can, like if you're in a tech death band, no one gives a fuck what you look like, what you wear. You just need to play to a certain level. But there's always few and far between that can get away with that. And with black metal, it's always presented itself as a little bit more refined, and let's be real, a little bit more flamboyant in some ways. Men wearing and I love that. Metal is denim and leather and chaps and gauntlets and spikes. Like, I love the pageantry about it, but let's call it what it is, because you said, you can't walk out on stage looking like Fred Durst. You can't be taken seriously as a black metal musician, and that's part of the art. It's not really fashion. I mean, it is, but fashion is art. Yeah,
I would agree. Just sidebarring slightly. So tonight on HBO, I think it's on HBO, there's a Woodstock 99 documentary, and I actually want to do in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to do a special on Woodstock 99 with a friend of mine, because it's always been the clusterfuck of what happened there has always fascinated me. But I went back on YouTube and I looked at some of those some of the clips of Limp Bizkit playing, Korn, Metallica. And I have to say this, and this will be very controversial. People will say I'm a poser, but they can go fuck themselves. As much as I was never really a fan of Limp Bizkit's music, I was never really a fan of Korn's music. One thing you cannot take away from those two bands is, Jesus Christ, could they command a crowd, and could they get a crowd going? Like, very, very few bands before or after them.
Those are the bands I grew up on, and there's a reason why they were that successful. I mean, of course, a lot of it is marketing, but you think about it, those are the bands that have also withstood the test of time, and still there's a lot of bands that came out at that era that couldn't hold up today. Coal Chamber, or Taproot. I even forgot that they were a thing. Or
Slaves on Dope.
El Nino, like oh my God, bands, and they were terrible. But you look at the ones that still are making a career for themselves, and there was a reason they stood out, and that was part of it. They had great stage presence, great command of their audience, and again, there was so much behind them. It was the music was, I mean, say what you want about nu metal. Again, I grew up on it. I love nu metal. The music was great in its own right. It really was. It was different. It was.
I'll say this controversially: nu metal to me is fucking a million times better than that bullshit metalcore garbage that preceded it. I mean, that to me was like everything sounded the same. It was just boring bullshit. Iron Maiden riffs thrown over double bass. and then a screaming verse, singing chorus. It's like, you can give me a Mushroom Head album 1,000,000 times over that crap. I would like, it's just that has just never done anything for me. And I was never hugely into the new metal scene, because by that point I was already pretty heavily into black and death metal. But new metal for me is one of those things. It's a bit like old school hip hop. It's like, when it's good, it's fucking great. Even Limp Bizkit, I've got to say, Stuck is a cool song. Rearranged, fucking awesome tune as well. Korn, what's that track that was massive for them on Issues? Make Me Bad.
Oh, that was great too.
Holy fuck, what a song.
And they still hold up today. They're great, and people don't want to admit it because, again, there was a stigma. And I'm with you with the metalcore thing, because I skipped right over that. Like, I
never got into any of it.
Yeah, for me, like, my gateways were new metal, because that's what was happening at the time. And then, I had an older cousin and other people in my life who were introducing me to all the classics: Slayer, Metallica, Anthrax, Misfits, stuff like that. Grunge was also huge for me. Nirvana, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden. And then from there, I started digging deeper into old school thrash, because that's where I felt I really connected the most musically. And then, like I said, I heard Cradle of Filth, and that took me to black metal. From there it was Demon Borgir, and then from there it was Immortal, and then from there Emperor, and it just kind of spirals out. So metalcore I completely skipped over. And it's interesting, because I think at the time too, it was one of those things that, like, I did have that sense of elitism. Like, this is silly. Like, I get now people look at me listening to Korn. Like, I kind of get it, but I still agree that it is silly. And I mean, it's a successful genre, but I don't know if that makes it good.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've, to be honest, I've never really cared about scenes. I've never, we're going to, like I said, we'll touch on this in a second, the whole cancel culture thing. But I do, in the back of my mind, I subscribe to the idea, if I don't bother to play the game at all, then I'm not bound to any of their stupid rules. And I kind of always felt like that about music generally. It's like, I'll listen to whatever the fuck I want. I'm a grown ass man. When I was, 16, 17, 18 years old, new metal was coming out. Some of it I liked, some of it I did not. I kind of had the constant. The constant for me was extreme stuff. Black metal was always the music genre that, when I really discovered it, that was what I was most connected to, and what I'm still most connected to. But because I think a Limp Bizkit tune or a Deftones tune is cool. I mean, if anyone has a problem with that, they can fuck right off. And I think
love the Deftones. They are my number one from all of these bands. Yeah.
Very, very cool. Very cool. I think from the like, of the new metal bands, again, this will be controversial. Mushroom Head are my favorite, even though they've got a lot of very shit songs. But I saw them live supporting for Il Nino. A friend of mine took me to go see Il Nino, and I was like, oh fuck, I don't want to see this. I hate their music. And he was like, oh well, they've got this band Mushroom Head that's opening for them. Maybe they're cool. I was like, okay. We went to go watch that, and I was like, Jesus, this is fucking great. Live they were awesome. And on Woodstock 99, if Biohazard had played at that show, the fucking riots would be going on right to this day.
That is true.
But that's one thing as well. Like, it saddens me how anodyne a lot of parts of the scene have become. Like, I mean, I'm not talking up the crazy bro nonsense from Woodstock 99, but there was like a sense of danger. Like, I've spoken a lot of times about this, like the level of craziness that you see at shows. Like, I remember the first couple of Slayer shows that I saw, bands that I've seen where the crowd just absolutely loses it. Like, the first Rammstein show I saw was like absolute fucking bedlam. Nowadays there's just none of that. And then there's this horrific cancer creeping into it, which to me is so antithetical to everything that I used to believe, being, having come in by way of bands like Wasp and, the enemies of the PMRC. And it's this politically correct shit. And it's like, people are embracing all of this woke nonsense and just insane crap. And people are like, I'm a communist and listen to trance black metal only. It's like, have I gotten old? Did I fall into a coma for 20 years and wake up to some sort of fresh hell? What the fuck is going on here?
Oh my God. I know it's been really strange to see, because, you're right. I mean, I would say I grew up during a time where metal was obviously very still dangerous. Marilyn Manson was like public enemy number one. And there was still a slight satanic panic around that, especially after the Columbine shooting here in America, and he was literally blamed for it. And there was a sense of danger, but at the same time, there was also the sense of, I'm a freak, I don't fit in, but I fit in with these people. And that is something that a lot of people lost sight of. And they just looked at it was something evil and alienated and didn't quite understand the role it played in comforting, especially people like me, young teenagers who were, going through puberty and finding themselves and feeling very alone and outcast from society. And so you always had those two elements. And I think it's okay to have those two elements. But what is really troubling to me is that the same people who are fighting for the scene to be very inclusive are also trying to make it very exclusionary. And they're trying to say, this is only inclusive to these types of people and everyone else can get the fuck out. And I don't like that, because the dangerous part aside, to me, metal has always been a home for people like me, people like you, people who always march to the beat of our own drummer and found something a little bit deeper in life, deeper in art, deeper in music. And that's all it is. It's not that I have these crazy ideologies and that's what they're trying to make it. If you listen to this band, you must be a Nazi. If you listen to this band, you must be a fascist. And it's like, how does that have anything to do with who I am? I like a riff. I'm part of this. I love music and I'm always discovering new music. I don't sit there and do a full forensic accounting and say, let me make sure this band is safe first. I don't care if it's safe.
And there's people on Twitter that actually promote that kind of crap, right? They say I'm, they'll ask their friends, like, I've just discovered this band, just checking with everybody that they're not NSBM. It's like, is this how lame it's gotten?
And what is NSBM? I mean, at Season of Mist, we get tossed into that category often. And it's usually because of rumors or complete slander, and people just believe it. And that's what's so scary too, is that I could just turn around and say that band is a Nazi, and people will say, she said it, so it must be true, without, if I say that, I want you to actually do your own research and see. I mean, a great example would be someone reached out to me on Twitter privately and said, I've been really getting into a lot of black metal. There's been a lot of bands that I've seen you post about that I've gotten interested in. One of them is this band Drook. And I just bought a whole bunch of their shirts and changed my profile picture. And people are attacking me now and saying that I'm a Nazi and I shouldn't listen to this band. And I don't understand. And it's like, I don't quite understand that either, because Drook, I mean, there are members in that band that were in Hate Forest. And I mean, literally like 20 years ago, they did play a show where they had Nazi imagery on the stage, and that's not okay. I'm not saying, I endorse that. I think it's great, but you know what? I endorse their right to do that. I don't, and people often mistake that. If I say a band has a right to do that, they think that means, well, you must support the message. No, I don't support the message. I just support people's autonomy, because once you start saying you can't do this, where's the line drawn? Then you give leeway to the extremist Christians that want to ban Behemoth and want to ban Gaul and Gorgoroth and Marilyn Manson, and want to take what a good 50% of our genre is about, as far as the philosophical and religious aspects, or anti-religious aspects. So it's like, you really can't pick and choose. It's kind of an all or nothing thing. But I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent. But since then, that band has apologized for it. And they played one show and donated 100% of the proceeds to an orphanage in Ukraine. And so they have not promoted those ideals since. And people change, people grow. Back then, this was very prominent in our scene, but it's not indicative of what's prominent now. But people want people to suffer, everyone else to suffer for mistakes they made when they were young, for things that they did in their past that, I mean, I think about back to things I said or did even 5 years ago, and I'm like, oh my God, it was so cringe. Like, if you knew me in my early 20s, forget me. So I don't think it's right to hold people accountable for things they said or did when they've already learned and grown for them. And, it made me sad that here's this person who was so excited to discover a band that they fell in love with. And now they're being told you're a bad person for liking this band, and even then lyrically, all of their lyrics are just like Ukraine poems. They're about nature, and there's nothing controversial about that. And it's just, and there's also the 6 degrees of separation game. Well, this guy played on a split EP with this guy, who played in this band with this guy, and that guy was in this Nazi band. So they're all Nazis by default.
Oh, yeah.
It's troubling. And again, it's like, there's a dark underbelly to the scene. Metal, in particular black metal, was built on counter-cultural ideals and built on being evil. And while I may not necessarily agree with all of those ideals, I understand that it is a rudimentary part of this genre. Can other people learn from it and grow from it? Sure. Can you erase it? No, you can't. I'm sorry. And again, once you start erasing it, it's dangerous because number one, you can misplace that anger and you can attack someone or cancel someone who really doesn't have anything to do with that just because they were somehow affiliated. I mean, look what happened to Nurgle a couple of years ago because he posted a photo of him with Rob Darkins and everyone went berserk. It's like Nurgle is, to me, very progressive and I think fits in more so with the progressive left ideologies, not so hardcore, but he has a lot of very liberal ideals. And I mean, in the traditional sense of liberal, not what we're seeing now, which are quite frankly, completely fascist ideals. They tell you it isn't, but when you're telling people they can only say a certain thing, they can only speak a certain way, or you will violently attack them, you will hurt them, you will hurt their family members.
Well, you see, I mean, not related to metal, but the way that the trans movement is, or some members of the trans movement have behaved towards J.K. Rowling. It's insane. The other day she was threatened with rape, and that's a constant thing: death threats, rape threats, and stuff like that. I don't understand how people can. I'm 41 years old. I've never once in my life, no matter how furious I was, go, I know, I'll threaten to rape that person because that's the way that I'll prove I'm right. It's like how can something like that cross your mind, and for you to then still have the temerity to kind of say, yeah, I'm on the right side of history. Yeah. The irony for me about all of this is that a lot of the same, anarcho cultist communist fucking nonsense. These are the same people that are screaming, defund the police, abolish all prisons. So you want to abolish all prisons? People in prison should be allowed a second chance, no matter what they did, murder, rape, anything like that. Vox runs their stupid little documentary about how MS-13 are nice boys who ride their bikes. But what's saying Nurgle gets photographed with Rob Darkin at the end. He should never be allowed to play anywhere ever again. The guys from Magua, I mean, I had Gavin from the Damnation Festival on here, and he was talking to me about how much shit he took for including Magua on on one of their festival bills. And then the other day I was looking, once in a while I morbidly scroll through some conversations on Twitter. I saw people talking about Psycho Las Vegas, and the first thing this idiot posts is Psycho Las Vegas is good except for all the Nazis, and then they start listing it: Mayhem, Emperor, Magua. It's like, fucking hell, man. Like, do you just want to drain all the joy out of life?
It is what they want to do, and again, it's so misguided. They're not calling people who are actual Nazis. Yeah. And here's the other weird thing too: like, you don't want people to have these ideals, then who are you going to be angry at? Because you're not going to allow the people who you want to be angry at to say things that you can be angry at. You know what I'm saying? Like to me, I would like to know if someone is a genuine Nazi and really believes in white purism, because I'd like to stay away from that person. I don't want to date them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I might like their music. For me, music is a commodity. It is art. And I don't look at it any other way. I mean, I listen to a bands like Power Trip and a band like Rage Against the Machine, but at the same time, I'll listen to System of a Down, or I'll listen to Ted Nugent or Iced Earth. I mean, Iced Earth has always been one of my favorite bands.
Ted Nugent.
I know. But Iced Earth has always been one of my favorite bands. And a lot of people were like, oh, they're so political. Have you listened to an Iced Earth album other than one album they put out, which was literally about like the American Revolution and nothing happening presently? All of their stuff is fantasy. It's all comics and it's Spawn and it's horror movies. Like there's nothing political about their music. So why can't I just enjoy their music?
It's also if you are incapable of, so if you're going to abide by that line and you're going to say I'm incapable of listening to music by anybody who I morally or politically or socially disagree with, then I hope you are never going to watch another Quentin Tarantino movie again, because once upon a time he was produced by Harvey Weinstein. He was very close to him. By the way, you should also, by extension, probably cut out most movies made prior to 2015, because at some point, somebody touched on Meryl Streep and Kevin Bacon and Robert De Niro and everybody who was also produced by Harvey Weinstein. And then you go on and on and on. I've mentioned this book by Tom McNeil that I'm reading right now called Chaos, which is about this. It's very interesting if you haven't read it yet, but it's this investigation he did into the Tate murders, and how basically as he started digging into it, it seemed like the CIA and the FBI were actually behind a lot of what happened with the Manson family. And, you know, there's a whole lot of stuff in there, but he talks about some of the craziness that was going on in the 60s. Like, we may as well just cancel the whole 70s and 80s, because let's be honest, if there were a mobile phone around when Black Sabbath were touring, or Led Zeppelin were touring, or Motorhead were touring, those bands wouldn't be allowed to continue by this moral standard. To me, it's just staggering. It's like, it's all the things that you accuse the extremist Christians of, oh, it's just music. You don't have to agree with everything they're saying. All the other tropes that they trot out. It's like, but you're doing exactly the same thing as they're doing. You don't have the enough strength of your convictions to go, I can listen to Philosophem and I can appreciate it for the incredible piece of music that it is. I don't have to agree with what Varg says or everything that he says. I can think the guy's a lunatic, but I mean, let's be honest. How many great lunatic artists have there been, not just over the last decade or two, the last several centuries? What's his face? Who's that painter that cut off his own ear? I mean, Jesus, you're not a balanced person. Yeah, you're not a balanced person that goes, I know, time to get the knife out and cut it out. It's the same that I don't watch a horror movie. I don't watch Halloween and go, that Mike Myers, he's got it going on. Let me get the knife out.
I mean, it's true when people do say that. I mean, there's something clearly wrong with them with a mental illness that, you know, and I kind of feel pity for you if you really can't blur the lines between that. Again, like, I think there's just this, I don't want to understand where this person comes from. I just want to execute them in the town square. When maybe you realize when you talk to some of these people that something deeper is going on. They have a mental illness, or they were abused, and this caused this kind of way of thinking that is not normal, and maybe they just need help. And you're not going to help people by exposing by violently attacking them or exposing them on Twitter and starting like a whole war against them, because hatred just begets hatred. Violence begets violence. When you start hurting people, you're just going to encourage them to be more hateful. And I mean, I personally take the approach of, if someone says something I don't like, okay, I could mute them. I could unfollow them. I don't have to talk to them. I don't want them to censor themselves for me, but I could just remove myself from that situation if I don't want to be a part of it. I don't feel the need to attack them and tell them I hate them or threaten them, or take a picture of them and put their home address online and tell people they're a bad person. I don't feel the need to do that. I just feel like I can separate myself from that person quietly and move on with my life. And it's just insane to me how militant. I mean, it's dangerous out there. You know, kids can't go to a show wearing a Burzum shirt now. And again, listening to that doesn't make you a certain type of person. I mean, when I was a kid and first heard about Burzum, I was 14, 15 years old, something like that. And of course, it was so cool. He burnt down churches and it was so exciting. And looking back, it's like, okay, you know, I could see how it was not cool. He murdered someone. That was kind of really terrible. But when you're young and you're coming into it, there's this element where it's just kind of like, I guess maybe, exciting maybe. And
there's a fascination.
Yeah, there's a fascination. It doesn't mean that I endorse that, or I'm going to go murder someone or burn down a church. And now as an adult, I could see, that was completely fucked up and you shouldn't have done that. But again, you have to let people think these things for themselves, because the more, it's like mom and dad saying, you're not allowed to do that. What are you going to do? You're going to do that. You know, you're not allowed to listen to this band. So I'm going to listen to this band.
I also think, you know, there's something to be said about people changing over the course of 2 decades. I mean, you just said it yourself. 5 years ago, you were a very different person to what you are right now. I certainly was very different, 10 years ago. There's a photo of me, which I'll never allow to be released to the public. There's a photo of me playing my first show with the one and only band that I was in properly, Imperial Empire. And I thought it would be fucking badass to run around in a Soviet Union, like hammer and sickle t-shirt. Now, I mean, you've heard the throwaway comments I've made about communism. I mean, you know, for one, I personally think, if if you support communism, you may as well support the Nazis, because the communist death count is actually way higher than the Nazis. They scum cut from the same fucking BO soaked cloth. But again, I didn't know what the hell I was doing there. I just wanted to be confrontational. You telling me that stuff that Hellhammer said or Fenris said or any of these guys said in the past wasn't just because they were very young and they wanted to present this image of being rebellious and being a bit confrontational and being edgy and stuff like that. Most of what these people, I mean, I've met a lot of these people, as have you. Most of what they say, they don't mean. There's like an image. There's an idea of a Mortus, and there's an idea of an Attila. It's very different to the human being.
I agree. It's so true. And it's like, again, too, where if someone decides, you know what, Hellhammer said this and did this, and I don't want to listen to Mayhem anymore. That's your right. You don't have to listen to Mayhem anymore. I respect that. But now it's this, no one else is allowed to listen to them either. That starts to get really scary. And especially the way people go about it, because I'm all about, if I say or do something you don't like, having a discussion with me. Find me on Twitter, hit me up, send me an email and tell me how you feel. I might ignore you. I might answer you. And maybe you'll change my mind about some things, but you're not going to change my mind into believing that the best tactic is violence and the best tactic is hatred and humiliation. People are people. And, I believe crimes can be committed against someone's body. I believe crimes can be committed against someone's property, but crimes cannot be committed against someone's feelings.
Yeah. To you, I say, words of violence, words of violence.
I'm so sick of that. And again, it's starting to get so harmful. Like for me as a woman, can I say I've experienced sexism? Sure, absolutely. Is it rampant? No. But now there's this like weird reverse sexism that is actually sexism that people don't realize, where it's, okay, you're a woman, so now I have to fill this quota of having a certain amount of women play at this festival or a certain amount of women work at this job, so I'm going to hire you. And to me, that's just as bad as saying I'm going to hire you because you're a man. And people maybe don't see that that's harmful, but it is. It's just causing this really harmful way of thinking now, where people who may not even necessarily be sexist or have these ideals themselves now are, because they think the right thing to do is to favor you because of your gender. I can't speak today. I'm sorry.
Don't worry. I'll be doing it all week.
It's later in the day, so I smoked a little bit of weed already. So I'm a little high. I feel like if you know me, you should know I'm usually stoned off my face, and I might have smoked a little too much today.
All right, fair enough.
But yeah.
But that's what you're talking about is again, that's classic of this modern left. It's the bigotry of low expectations. It's to me, I mean, that to me is the most racist, the most sexist of all. It's like, because very often it's perpetrated by, simple middle-class white people, especially white men. And they'll go, you woman or you black man, you sit in the corner, I'll fight your battles for you. It's like, so you're basically telling me I'm not capable of achieving any kind of success whatsoever without your manly white assistance. Isn't that just the absolute epitome of being racist or being sexist?
It really is, or it's saying, okay, well, just because of the color of your skin, or just because of your gender, or just because of your sexual preference, you're automatically disadvantaged. And that means you're never going to get by in life if I don't help you. And to me, that's bullshit. And it is coming from, when you look at these people, I am a huge fan of Andy Neo. He is a journalist. He's of Korean descent.
You canceled straight away now. I know Andy Neo.
I know I am. And, I read his book, and when you really see the profiles he does on these people who are Antifa or BLM, they are rich white kids who have never had to work a day in their lives, who are handed everything on a silver platter, who don't know oppression, who don't know violence, and they act as if they do. And again, they speak on the behalf of people who have experienced these things, and don't let those people be heard. If you're a Black person and you say, I don't agree with this, oh my God, but I said it, so it's right. So how do you not see that you're now also being racist and you're silencing the voices that you're claiming that you want to elevate? And it's really become troubling because people, it's even more troubling. People don't see it that way. I mean, I myself, sure, people look at me and say, you're white, so you're maybe more advantaged. Am I though? Because let's see, I don't have a college degree. I do have a criminal record. didn't come from a very supportive environment. I grew up in a very low income neighborhood where there was a lot of crime, a lot of violence. I mean, I was a victim of my first crime at 13 years old as a child. And I understand what it's like to come from that kind of background. And I understand the reward when you work hard and you get where you are and you don't let those things get in your way. And there are a lot of people who feel this way, and these Antifa BLM voices are telling those people, you're not allowed to feel that way. You have to tell me, I tell you how to feel. It's like, again, what you're doing the opposite of what you're claiming to do.
Well, I was just about to say, it's again that crying fascism, but you're the fascist. It's like, I at the moment, again, so many people. I spoke to Alan about this on Messenger the other day, and I was like, I don't understand how so few people can actually see, and it just proves it again. What I said on the interview that I did with him, I said, what I came to realize over the last 2 years, it's not just a case of people forgetting their principles. They didn't have principles to begin with. They just they're led entirely by emotions, and what the mainstream news media tells them, that's what they go with, And the mainstream news media and the politicians play them like a fiddle. You can just you can see it now. The January 6th insurrection, and then it's like slow, somber piano music playing, slow motion, white man screaming rage, and it's like, really, about 100 drunk fucking buffoons, walked into the Capitol building, got booted out. One of them got shot by the cops. 2 hours later, everything was back to normal. And you're trying to tell me this was an insurrection and the security of the nation was at risk, and it's worse than 9/11 or the Civil War? You're letting the government now dictate to you what information you should be able to read and what not, based on what they believe to be misinformation, under the auspices of anti-vaccination, which, if you look at the statistics, by the way, the higher percentage of folks that are unvaccinated right now, Hispanic, African American. It's got nothing to do with Trump. It's got nothing to do with QAnon people. There are just certain people that are skeptical of the vaccine. And if you want to really extrapolate that any further, maybe you should look to yourself. And when Biden and Harris were on the campaign trail, they were both saying they wouldn't take the vaccine.
You're right. There's been a lot of that hypocrisy. I mean, for me personally, what I think is really funny, because most of my life I've absolutely identified more so as a liberal. I have a lot of liberal ideals. I'm very, very starchly pro-choice as a woman, being one of those ideals. And as me, who believes that my body, my choice, I also believe that with the vaccine, and that goes for everyone. I believe I should be in control of my own reproductive rights. I believe I should be in control of my own medical decisions. And I think too, if you were to tell people you have an option, more people would get it, because there's something scary about your government bribing you. I mean, I don't know if you know what's going on here, but certain states and cities were like, if you like in California, they had a lotto, you could win like multi-million dollars if you get the vaccine. And in Jersey, it was like you get free beer and which to me, it's like, I don't know, this is a public health crisis. Why are you encouraging people to drink alcohol, which lowers your immune system? I mean, there's all this conflicting things. And I ultimately, after being very conflicted, did choose to get the shot. And it was after a family member of mine, my cousin, who is the same age as I am, who is an active duty member of the military, way better health than I am, works out, runs 10 miles a day. And he got it. He wasn't hospitalized, but he was really sick. And hearing him tell me on the phone, I wasn't going to get the vaccine either. Please get it. I don't want you to be as sick as I am. And that really got to me. And at that point, I'm not hearing it from the government. I'm not hearing it from some stranger on the street on Facebook screaming at me. I'm hearing it from someone who loves me and who I love, who is going through this themselves. And it did kind of give me a change of heart. And you want to know something? I had a very severe symptom and a very severe reaction to it that nobody is reporting and nobody is looking into, because no one gives a fuck about women. And it turns out, fun fact, that it completely demolishes your menstrual cycle and you have severe issues after. I didn't know this. I'm wondering.
And I read somebody post something like that on, I can't remember where they were talking about it.
Probably me.
Well, it might have been. No, but I have seen it in multiple sources. And they were written off. It's like, oh, this is hysteria, conspiracy theory, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, no. Who are you to write off people's legitimate concerns as conspiracy theories?
It's so harmful. And it hurts me for that as well, because I mean, I had no idea that's why I was experiencing the symptoms I was having. And then I spoke with a girlfriend of mine, just casually mentioned it. We were out shopping. I'm like, I can't try pants on right now. I'm severely bloated because I'm bleeding out. And she's like, and I am on birth control, so I'm not supposed to get my period. And she's like, it's a vaccine. And I'm like, wait, what? She's like, it's a vaccine. And you look and there's hundreds of women like me who went through the same thing or something similar on Reddit. And there's no actual mainstream media, especially here in the United States, reporting on it. And I spoke with my doctor about it. And she actually, said, you're not the first person to tell me this. And she admitted that when the first person, it was actually another healthcare practitioner, contacted her and said, this happened to me, and I think it's a symptom of the vaccine, that doctor herself also wrote that other practitioner off and was like, I doubt it's related to something else. And then once more and more women like myself started reporting it and saying, this is happening to me, they started to take it more seriously and look into it. But it's like, why isn't this being reported? Would that have maybe changed my mind if I got the shot? I don't know. I mean, it's too late because I wasn't able to make a very informed decision.
Yeah.
And my more concerns are, what does that mean for me in the long term? And I'm not saying this either to scare people, and I'm not saying this to tell people not to get the vaccine, because I do believe you should make your own choices, but you should make informed choices and you should have all the information. And I don't believe that we here or anywhere on this planet are being given honest, open information. And I that's what's scary. If someone said to me, this is a side effect and this is a potential, and we don't really know enough about it to know what's going on in the long term, I would appreciate that. And that's what's so scary, that when people do come forward and say, I experienced a symptom. I mean, look at Eric Clapton. He felt nerve damage from it. And people are like, you're an idiot. You're a lunatic. You don't want mandatory vaccinations at your concert, so you're a murderer. And it's like, no, like, if you didn't experience what someone like me or someone like Eric Clapton experienced and you didn't have those side effects, that's great. I'm happy for you, but don't now make us seem like liars or conspiracy theorists, because that's what's also making this so harmful. And it's just, again, I just feel no one's being told that they're allowed to make their own decisions. I mean, we're having now people doing vaccine checks door to door here in the States.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah. In France, you're now arrested if you are asked to show your vaccine card. You don't have one.
Yeah. Which is, again, part of my, and I don't have it yet. I will get it because I want to travel at the end of the year, and I kind of feel that's going to give me my best shot of being able to do it. But part of my vaccine hesitancy comes from how heavy-handed they are about you taking it. It's like, like if somebody comes up to you and says, try this chocolate, and you go, no, thanks, I'm not in the mood for chocolate. And they go, try this chocolate. It's like, it's really good. No, thank you. Try it. It's like, what the fuck is in that chocolate? Why do you want me to try it so badly? I predict this, and I think I'm going to be, I hope I'm not, but I think I'm going to be proven right. I reckon in 20 years from now, there are going to be mass civil lawsuits filed against pharmaceutical companies. And if not pharmaceutical companies, because I know they have a degree of immunity during all of this, it's going to be against government. Somewhere there's going to be some sort of kind of mass class action, because people are going to, either get Alzheimer's or cancer or something like this. And that makes me very nervous, massively nervous about doing it.
Infertility, I believe now that this has happened to me. I mean, I hope I go infertile, but there's women who don't feel that way, and women my age who want to have children, and now they might not be able to. And I don't know. And again, I'm not saying that's a weird thing too, you can't even speculate. You can't even ask questions. I'm being very transparent. I don't know that that's true. It's a concern of mine. Am I wrong? Could I be wrong? Absolutely. I hope I am. But there's also a possibility I could be right. And I think that's what's so harmful too, where you're not allowed to ask questions. I'm not allowed to say, does this vaccine work? Does this vaccine really protect me? Is this vaccine dangerous? I'm not allowed to ask those questions. And that's scary, that I can't even ask an honest question. And again, I'm not trying to persuade people. I'm not trying to push any propaganda on anyone. But at the same time, I want people to, the propaganda I'm trying is people just should think for themselves, make your own decisions, and you should be allowed to make your own decisions. That's it. What do I care? Now, if you're vaccinated, I'm vaccinated, and this person isn't, what do I care if I'm supposedly protected? The Delta variant is going around. By all accounts, supposedly it's not deadly. So why is everyone so scared about it if you're vaccinated? I don't, again, there's so much conflicting information that's not making sense, that's raising a lot of alarm bells.
It's also, again, because people fail to kind of they fail to interpret data correctly. So, as an example, one of the things that the news is freaking out about right now, and I mean they were desperate to hang mass outbreaks on Ron DeSantis or on Governor Abbott in Texas. But new cases don't necessarily translate to new deaths, and surely that's what's important. Yes, it sucks that people are getting sick, but it's not about cases; it's about deaths. The death toll of the virus was significant, but it's significantly less now than it was. I think in the UK this week, only something like 14 people died. A little while back in Australia, I think this was like 2 weeks ago, or whatever, they had one new case, whole new lockdown. I mean, it's fucking insane.
Yep. One of
So
my
are
bands.
you gonna say that that anytime someone has the flu, and when flu season comes around in the next 12 months, right, guys, lockdown. We're not sure if this is COVID or not, so lockdown. Because let's also be honest, flu cases mysteriously disappeared. I would waver a guess that hundreds of thousands of COVID cases were flu cases that were misdiagnosed. I mean, that I am 100% convinced. You can't get the statistical anomaly that flu dropped to the point that it did, and COVID increased by roughly the same amount. So, but I do agree with you. I think it's obscene that we're in a culture where increasingly we're not allowed to ask questions, we're not allowed to say anything. Saying anything can get you deplatformed. I mean, it's and it's the same with so many different things. That's what people don't understand when they look at what the government in America is doing right now with what they want to do with social media. They're basing it on vaccine hesitancy, but the whole Hunter Biden laptop scandal. What's the name? New York Post was booted off Twitter for 4 months because they dared report on it. There was another scandal that came out where he was caught on text message repeatedly calling his lawyer the N-word. If that were Donald Trump Jr., I can guarantee you we would to this day never hear the end of it. There'd be documentary shot, the piano music kicking in, him walking slowly down the road and, mouthing the N-word. they do like one of those, one of those refaces to show him mouthing the N-word as he walks. Like, you didn't even hear about it. But then the other thing is, even if you're on the furthest of far left, what you need to be thinking to yourself is the pendulum historically always swings. Do you want the government making that decision when it's Republicans that are in the White House? It's just like, and that's where it comes back to me about principles. Like, you're either a free speech absolutist or you're not. You either believe in certain principles and you vote based on, in my opinion, what is almost always the least worst option, because let's be honest, there aren't great politicians. I've got one or two politicians I like, Rand Paul being one of them, but for the most part, I have no trust in politicians. I think they're miscreants, and they're incentivized to basically take my money and put it in the pockets of the political class. I mean, why else do so many of them get rich working in the public sector? But I think a lot of this is people never had any principles to begin with, so they never analyze anything based on, do I think it's a good idea that the government controls social media? Yes or no. It doesn't matter who's in the White House. Do I think that it's a good idea that the government can come and knock on my door and invade my privacy and ask me private medical information to which they frankly have no right? Yes or no. Again, regardless of in the White House. Can you imagine if Trump was president and he said, we're going to send people around to come check your vaccine status?
They would kill him. And I mean, it was crazy too. Like, you're talking about the racist things that Hunter Biden said. Joe Biden and Vice President Harris have said some of the most racist things I've ever heard in my life. I mean, Joe Biden is out here saying that Black people don't have access to lawyers or accountants. Like, I'm sorry, did you watch,
oh yeah, I saw that.
Did you not watch the George Floyd trial? Did you not watch the O.J. Simpson trial?
Well, Kamala Harris implied that Black people don't have access to photocopiers.
I mean,
because she was talking about voter ID. Yeah.
Because that's where they had to change their story, because originally they're trying to say that Black people don't have access to identification. So they're saying that that the Black people here in America can't get cigarettes, can't get liquor, can't check into a hotel, can't take a flight, can't drive. This is what they're saying. It's insane. And that they're getting away with it, and that no one's saying, wow, that's really screwed up that you feel that way about an entire populace and think that they're incapable of doing something that everyone can do and everyone does do. I mean, it's wild. I mean, it's just, and no one's reporting on it. Now they're changing the story. And the bottom line is the reason why this is coming out is because there's laws that they're trying to make here about how you really, to try to make it so you can't cheat in an election. And while there's certain things I don't necessarily agree with, like I do believe there should be 24-hour voting polls, especially for someone like myself who works multiple jobs and has odd hours, things like that. I think we should keep, and I don't think those should be taken away. But I do agree too that you should have a valid driver's license. I personally know multiple people, not one, not two, multiple people who used a fake address and committed voter fraud. I know people who did that, okay? I know one person in particular hit me up in Philadelphia. He's from New York, and he was like, I'm in Philly, do you wanna hang? And I'm like, yeah, what are you doing out here? Voting, you don't live here. I know someone else hitting me up. Do you have someone who lives in Atlanta with an address I could use because I need to go vote in Atlanta? This person's also from Philadelphia. So here's people voting in different states and cities, in swing states and cities, committing voter fraud. And I'm not necessarily saying the election was rigged. I'm not saying that because, again, you can't even ask, you can't question it.
Oh, you're not allowed to say that at all.
No,
not at all.
Not at all. But at the same time, do I believe that people were able to commit fraud? Absolutely. I know people who were. So I agree. Yes, you should have a driver's license. I don't want someone to steal my identity and be able to take a vote away from me.
Yeah.
That's important to me. And this is how they're trying to spin it. And that makes me suspicious too. If I was just accused of cheating an election, I would say, yes, let's make sure we do real detailed audits everywhere. We really look into it and let's show you that I'm right. And again, this weird secrecy around it. It's like, I don't know, why don't you want people to
I agree.
Pull the curtain back?
Did they not just discover that all the Arizona election records had been destroyed? They were about to edit the Arizona state election, and they found all the voting information had been deleted.
I have to be honest with you. I don't know, because they are saying that, and then other people are saying it's not. And that's what's also really screwing with people's heads, is that there's so much conflicting information. I mean, they're saying that the team that went and audited it was either Florida or Arizona, I can't remember which, said right from the get-go that there was evidence of voter fraud, and then they were immediately dismissed, and it was an erroneous claim. So there's so much conflicting stuff coming out that, again, no one can genuinely say what is or isn't, because we're being told two completely different stories. And again, that's very scary, that there's no transparency. To me, growing up, I always wanted to be a journalist, because to me, those were the heroes in society. They were the ones who did the job that no one else did. They were the ones exposing corruption. They were the ones going out there and pulling the curtain back and showing you the truth. And now I don't believe that anymore. And it's sad, it's scary, because you don't know who's telling the truth. I can't tell you this one's telling the truth or this one isn't, because that is true that people have said that. Do I know if it's true or not? I don't. Am I inclined to believe it? Yeah. Does that mean I'm right? No. But it's just what I can tell you is I personally know people who committed voter fraud, and I'm not allowed to say that either. And when I call them out on it, I'm told I'm the asshole. It's like
Nazi.
I'm the Nazi because I don't think you should commit voter fraud. I think you should vote in your own state where you're from.
Again, it comes down to principle. If the Republicans had their thumb on the scale, would you want voter ID? Would you want transparent elections? Do you want people to be able to be confident in the election process? But again, whenever they start going to such extremes as comparing the Georgia voter laws, as an example, to Jim Crow, I mean, again, you look at it and you go, am I the only one who thinks this is fucking nuts? It's you're comparing asking people for ID when they go and vote to slavery. It's sending making sure that black people aren't allowed in bars and restaurants and have to sit at the back of the bus. It's fucking insane.
It's so insane. Our president literally compared this to the Civil War and Jim Crow. And it's like, no, it's literally just about whether or not you could cheat in an election. Why are you trying to deflect and turn it into something it isn't?
They love trotting all of those things out. Jim Crow, the Civil War, Nazi. That's like the three things that keep coming out. Then the people start, or the people decide in Cuba, listen, we've kind of had enough of this communist business, and they just keep quiet about it. It's like, well, we're keeping a close eye on it, but I think the other day when they were really, really pressed, they were like, "Yeah, communism has never worked." It's like, but you kind of, when you're talking about reparations and wealth redistribution, that's kind of communism. and when you continually print money and destroy the currency and give people free shit and buy votes, that's also communism. But I personally think the pendulum is going to swing, and it's not me taking a side or anything like this. I can just see it happening. Who's the most popular politician in America right now? By no small stretch of the imagination, Ron DeSantis.
Love him. And it's true, because he's the only one that's coming out there with balls and letting people make their choice. And that's the other thing too, because people are twisting it, saying he's anti-vax. He's not anti-vax. He's anti-mandatory vaccine. There's a huge difference. He's been supporting the vaccines. He's been out there and, getting the shot himself. And he has encouraged people to get it if they want to. He's not forcing them to get it. I think he's the only one actually making steps. It is a crime now, and it is illegal for you to ask to see someone's papers. I think that's okay, because I feel that, yes, I do have my vaccine. Do I always have my card on me? No, that is something I will lose or get wet, or it will get damaged. So I don't believe I should be, and even if people aren't, like I said, that doesn't affect me. I don't care if you are or you aren't, because I made my own choice and I'm happy with the choice I made. And even if I decide not to get vaccine, I'd still be okay with that choice, because I was for a while deciding not to get it. And I wouldn't alienate other people because they were or weren't. And it's just really creating more of a divide. And people hate DeSantis because he's the only one who's actually trying to give his own people freedom. I mean, he's also the only one who said to Antifa, come down here. I fucking dare you. I dare you. Watch what happens. Our police are taking you the fuck down. We're not going to sit back like Portland and say, let the people riot. No, the people will not riot. And that they haven't gone down there. You haven't seen what you're seeing in Portland or Minneapolis or Denver. You're not seeing that. And you don't even know what's happening in these cities, because that's the other thing. Media, it's not sexy to talk about how the far left right now is burning American cities to the ground and attacking police stations and attacking innocent civilians. So let's not report it. I have plenty of friends who are not American and they are from other countries who really believe Antifa is good. And I don't blame them, because they're being fed information through a filter, and they really are being led to believe that the people they're attacking are genuine Nazis and fascists. They don't understand that they're just innocent men, women, and children who they just have a problem with for whatever reason.
Yeah, very often it's mob mentality. It's no different to the rioters at Woodstock '99, quite frankly. I mean, everything that I saw over the summer last year, I didn't see anything good happen there. I spoke about it on the show. I said, most of these neighborhoods and stuff like that are being destroyed and burned down, they're in minority neighborhoods. You're destroying minority-owned businesses. You're destroying minority-owned or minority quality of life. You're destroying, people's ability to get round, to work, to have a life for themselves and their family. Not all of those people want you to do this. Yes, they might be upset about what happened, but at the same time, if you want to go burn down a neighborhood, burn down your own fucking neighborhood. Don't heap even more misery on these people who've already been through a lot. I just think it's such a skewed moral. I wouldn't even say it's moral. It's just it's perverse, is what it is. And then to your point about journalists, it's people like Andy No and James O'Keefe from Project Veritas that get deplatformed, and they're scum. You shouldn't listen to them. When James O'Keefe is like, I'm presenting unedited video to you based on what insiders are providing me with, like gives a complete transcript of what happened. No, it's edited. It's false. It's fake news, misinformation. It's like that episode of Seinfeld where Jerry, where Jerry bounces the check in the bodega, and he wants to pay off Marcelino to get it done, and Marcelino says, "Sorry, it is against the policy." It's like, but you own the store. Like, even I am not above the policy. It's like,
it's true. That's exactly.
Look at all the Cubans in Florida, like last year in November, begging people, saying, "Listen, we've seen what comes of all this crazy shit that you guys are supporting, which is why we're voting as we are. Don't let this happen to your own country." It's very easy to be a fucking champagne socialist when you're sitting there with your £7 Starbucks and your Mac and your iPhone and your designer clothes. When all that shit starts going away, we'll see how strongly you feel about socialism then.
Well, it's funny too, because, even what's going on in Cuba now, first and foremost, you're seeing a real push from the left to keep the Cubans out of here, because they know, this is the same people who, if you're from, Mexico, or you're from, Venezuela, come here, come to our country, because they know you'll vote Democrat. But once they say, oh, but you're Cuban, we know you're going to vote Republican, because you see that the Democratic Party is starting to resemble the Communist Party, which again, it was never like that. It's really just been something that's happened over the past like 6 or so years. And it's frightening to see how quickly it's declined. They want to keep them out. And it's a really uneven shift. And again, I'm also pro-immigration. Yes, I believe you have a right to be here. Don't believe you have a right to be here if you're a criminal. I don't believe you have a right to be here if you're smuggling drugs, especially heroin, and ones that are killing and causing people, children, and to die. And at the same time, I don't believe you should be here if you have committed a violent crime of any kind. I don't believe you should be here. And that too will now be a controversial thing. No, I believe you should be here if your intentions are pure. You're escaping something. Absolutely. Come here. That's what our country is for.
Yeah.
But not you if you're escaping crime you committed and you're on the run because your fellow gang members.
But what if you're what I was about to say, what if you're just a nice boy who rides his bike and you're an MS-13?
It's crazy. Yeah. And again, you know what, if that's really true, then why is no one going there and helping these boys get on the right path? You just want people to feel sorry for them, but then you do nothing about it to actually say, you know what, this is just a boy being led down the wrong path, and we need to actually intervene and get him out of there and give him a better life. You're just saying, accept this gang for what it is and just feel bad for them, but we're not going to do anything actually about it.
Yeah, well, feel bad that you don't like them. Yeah. So, and if you thought it was hysterical when Trump called them animals, then you're a racist. It's like, right. I did think it was very funny.
It is. It's crazy. Even like the whole thing, with Trump, quote unquote, endorsing the Proud Boys. The Proud Boys have done some racist things, sure. And again, I'm not defending them. This is really, man, we're both about to say
you're heading straight down, straight down the pathway to extremism.
I really am. The whole thing was that was his response to Antifa. It wasn't him saying, the Proud Boys should get out there and just start beating, people of color in the street. He was saying, if Antifa is going to pull the shit and they're the only ones that want to actually, push back, then go for it. Because again, you can't have one without the other. You need to condemn both, or, again, you have to be an absolutist. You can't just say it's only okay for extremism on this side and not okay for extremism on that side. If someone challenges you and says there's extremism on this side, what are you going to do about the extremism on that side? And your response is, let them, they need to maybe stand up and stand by because that side's getting crazy and maybe they need to fight them. Then you know what? I don't necessarily agree with that. I think both sides should not be doing anything. But again, it was twisted completely. And, but now you have Joe Biden out there talking about how, Black people are too stupid to vote. They don't know
how to use the
just
internet.
As good as white kids. It's like, what are you, or what he said, or like, it's just, it's.
Do you know Kyle Dunnigan?
No, I don't believe I do.
Oh, fucking hell. You have to see this. I'll share it with you real quick and see if you could just this coming over the speakers. So he does political comedy, but the last funny political comedy probably that exists. He does this. He's doing this thing at the moment called the Fresh Press of DC. And he does stuff about basically there's like 4 main characters. So there's Bill Maher, there's Hunter Biden, there's it's not going to work on because I'm actually using my work laptop and it's on restricted mode. I'll send you the link, but it's so fucking funny. Like, and Hunter is in there as well, and he falls in love with AOC. He's like. It's absolutely brilliant. It's just a sidebar. But what I was going to say is like nowhere is this absence of principle and where this hypocrisy is more rampant to me than you see the way that the fringes of the far left behave towards Black conservatives. People like Larry Elder, and folks who have legitimate stories to tell. I mean, Larry Elder. It tells this really great story about his dad and, how they sat down and kind of spoke for, I think, like 8 or 9 hours or whatever. And his dad told him about how he'd grown up with, no job or, he dropped out of school really young, then went to the army, came back, no job, had to beg people for worked, I think, 3 or 4 different jobs, scrub toilets and whatever to kind of make ends meet for them. He's a very, very smart guy, and you don't have to agree with everything that he says, but there's nothing that you can fault in terms of his moral intentions and his sincerity. But a guy like that, Uncle Tom, he's the N-word. He's it's fine to be racist towards people like that, but don't you dare say anything bad about Cardi B when she's interviewing Joe Biden. Never mind the fact that, she openly admits that when she was a stripper, she used to drug men and steal from them. So it's like, again, it's this very skewed moral sense that seems to be pervasive in society, and it's just it completely lacks in principle, and it is only led by one thing, and that is emotion. And whatever the news and the reality TV shit show that is politics tells me to follow, that's what I go for.
I actually believe it's led by narcissism, because I think it's a sense of self-importance and wanting to be important, and misdirecting that and saying, well, I'm going to be important. And I mean, what is also a symptom of narcissism? Violence. So here's what we're doing when you are feeling like you want to be better than everyone, and you take this very extreme approach, and I'm better than you because I'm fighting communists in the street. It's like, no, you're not. You're attacking innocent people in the street. You're attacking people because they have a different income bracket than you. You're attacking people because they're wearing a band shirt you don't like. You're attacking people because they voted for someone you don't agree with. And it's scary. And it's really, to me, I think it's a narcissistic, I believe, I mean, it's no secret. There's plenty of studies out there that narcissism has really become a plague on society in the age of social media, because it's really kind of promoted a lot of these ideals. And it is a mental illness, but unfortunately, it's also a very difficult mental illness in that narcissists don't want to admit they're narcissists, so they're not going to get treatment for it because they're perfect. They're better than everybody. And that's what I feel like. It's like, oh, my cat is meowing at me. He wants to go outside. No, baby, no, not now. Anyway, so yeah, that's where I believe it comes from, this sense of self-importance and just wanting to be better than everybody. And instead of actually doing good and, working hard and donating your money to a charity or volunteering at a local animal shelter, or sorry, my cat is being a little jerk right now. People are actually, instead, they're resorting to this real hardcore extremism that is complete opposite of what they're actually trying to promote.
Yeah. And I'm like you as well. I grew up in apartheid South Africa. So again, when people talk about racism, it's like, folks, I've seen the face of what real racism looks like. What I've seen is actual, honest to goodness, people that hate people because they look different, and they intrinsically believe that person's not a human being. So I grew up in that. My parents were very, very much of the left. When I was growing up, they were involved. I remember going to a Nelson Mandela Freedom Rally when I was 7.
Wow.
So I was involved in that. I kind of was very ignorant, though, in my political thinking. I kind of went with whatever my parents thought. And then when I got out of school, I was 21 when 9/11 happened, and then after 9/11, Iraq happened, and I kind of had my first glimmer of political awakening then, and which was to think, hey, this invasion smells like bullshit to me. I don't know if things make sense here. So I went really deep on that subject, but I went deep on no other subject. But because it was Bush leading the war effort, and I think Bush is an absolute imbecile, but because Bush was leading the war effort, I was against Bush, I was against the war. So for me, automatically, the Democrats were it. And it wasn't until quite a bit later I did there's a test you can do online called I Side With. And it basically asks you, almost as many questions as you'd like it to, where it'll say, what's your opinion on this? What's your position here? What's your position here? And it's like, you can ask for explanations, you can drill down into detail, and then eventually it tallies up your score and it gives you a percentage that says, okay, you align with all of the possible political candidates in a particular country as follows. And it was like, it'll be Hillary Clinton percentage, Trump percentage, whatever. And the result that I got when I did this for the first time was like, fuck, I can't believe this. I actually redid the test. And then all of a sudden I started realizing, it's like, hang on, there's something far, far bigger at work here than just, do I agree with war or am I pro-choice? It's like, you can be socially liberal and very fiscally conservative as I am, and you to be politically homeless, or do you go, okay, I don't really like any politician, but I'm going to go with the least worst option. This is most important to me. So hence why I'd if I were to vote, this is where I'd vote. It's kind of like that in the UK. I mean, the Conservatives they're not real conservatives, they're fucking morons. But Labour is much worse. Labour are basically communists. They're like diet Democrat. So who would I vote for over here? there's no party that really represents what I would like to see, which is for, the folks on welfare to be doing community service 24/7.
Yeah.
But I do think if people had conversations with each other on that level, like I agree with this, or I believe in this, I believe in this. Like, I bet if you and I did that, for example, I bet there'd be stuff where we agree, there'd be stuff we disagree, but I bet we would find that we have a lot more in common than we realize. And maybe, if you enter in, I think if you enter into that conversation with the right attitude, you could also go, hey, actually, maybe you've got a point here. I never thought about it this way. It's a shame that nuance in modern day conversation is gone. And I agree with you. I think you've got a very good point about it being narcissistic, because a lot of, especially the Gen Z and the younger millennials, they live for the likes. You can post some obscene nonsense on Twitter, or do a TikTok where you go celebrate your 5th abortion or something crazy like that. And people go, oh, you're so brave, so courageous, and it's like, oh, I feel so good. You get that kick of adrenaline, or that kick of dopamine because of what you've just done there. And then somebody else wants to better that and better that and better, and take it one step further. And then that spills out into real life. I mean, I genuinely think summer of last year, Portland in particular, is a microcosm of these people think that Twitter and Facebook and TikTok is what is real life.
That's exactly what it is. And again, it's all about, okay, I'm out here holding up my sign at this riot, so give me a like and think I'm special. You're not seeing people out there who are being quiet about it. They want you to know, and they want you to know not because they want to make a change. They want you to know because they want those likes. They want props. They want people to be proud of them. And, even doing this interview, I had slight hesitation, not because I knew he wouldn't agree, because it's like, do I want to open myself up now to all of the hatred and all of the violence that's going to get, thrown onto me and possibly you. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, but if I don't speak out, what am I really doing? And I'm not doing it for, I want pats on the back, or I want people to think I'm brave. I'm just doing it because I know there's actually other people out there like me who are afraid to speak up, and I want them to know they're not alone. And I am hoping that maybe I can change a mind or two. But at the same time, it's not my whole identity. It's not my whole life. And if people aren't going to agree with me and whatever, people want to attack me for it, that says more about them than it does about me. I could disagree with people and we could still be friends. I'm sure you and I will disagree about things. It's not going to make me feel differently about you. It's when we disagree and you tell me that I'm wrong, I should die, I should, whatever.
How dare you think that way?
Yes. Yeah. But Jackie, we've been talking for an hour and a half.
I know.
I do have to go because I have my nails done.
That's absolutely fine.
I know. I'm like, I just texted my technician, but I'm also kind of like, well, I kind of want to reschedule, but I'm also like, no, I have to get my nails done because one broke.
No, that's fine. I need to wrap it up as well, but it's been pure fire from start to finish. I agree with you. I mean, I think it's about how you go into these types of conversations, and I think fortunately the audience I've built up, generally people are very open-minded, and I think everyone knows, like, I certainly don't mean anyone any ill will. I mean, you need to live your life and do what's best for you. I just don't expect you to try and dictate to me how I should live my life. And I also believe that, what you put out there is what you're going to get back. I try my best to put as much positivity into the world as I can. And again, if anyone agrees with or disagrees with what I have to say, if you can make a strong case to convince me, I'm all ears.
Right.
And if you even communism, because I hate communism. So.
Same. And if you just want to debate, that's fine. Yeah. I'm not going to hate you. I'm not going to think differently of you. And I could do that in a way that's mature and calm and peaceful. And it's just a shame that other people don't feel that's even an option.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. All right, go do your nails. Thanks very much. And I will speak to you again very soon.
This was awesome, Jackie. I could talk to you. If we didn't cut this off, we'd be talking for 5 more hours.
Probably.
Yeah,
all right.
I could talk to you forever, man. Thank you again.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Off an album called All Occupied by Soul Death. That is a band called Kandra. The song is called Nothing But Immortality for I. It came out on Season of Mist earlier on in the year. It was actually Katy that turned me on to these guys. A very, very good record. And as it goes, an excellent conversation. Maybe dipping into some controversial territory there from time to time, but I'm pretty sure that all of you know this is a place for free thinkers. So let me know what you thought. And as I said, I really hope everybody enjoyed that, because I certainly did, and would love to have her back at some point in the not too distant future. Let's now talk about some new music, and a new record that has been on my radar for a couple of weeks now. A band called Bizarrekult with their new album Vi Overlevde. It's actually their debut. They're a four-piece band originally from Russia. They have since relocated to Norway. They actually put out their first demo in 2006, but it took them all the way to 2021 to release a proper debut. There's been, I believe, an EP and a split in the interim, but nothing official until now. Now that debut, as it turns out, combines the best of early Dark Throne, Gorgoroth, Enslaved, and a host of Scandinavian greats across 9 tracks proper, plus an intro and an ambient kind of avant-garde interlude halfway through the record. But as it turns out, those 9 tracks are almost uniformly excellent. Bizarrekult have this knack, which again, comes probably from a fairly lengthy gestation period for all of these tracks, of blending aggression with melody, with this occasional dip into avant-garde territory, which means that the record is very, very engaging, but it never feels predictable at any point. Another highlight of this album, from my perspective, are the instrumental performances. Again, I think, having a 15-year build-up to an album probably means that you sat on those songs and, perfected them over time. But really, from my perspective, I think that, everything from the just pounding drumming on this album, which is excellently produced, and really sounds like the drumming is, or the drummer is smacking them skins like they cussed his mama. Through to the vocals, I just think every single performance on this record is standout. I think the songs are very well written, very catchy, very memorable. And as far as 2021 is concerned, I mean, it's seen a ton of great releases so far. But I would say that, maybe there's been somewhat less great debuts than we've become accustomed to and maybe spoilt with over the last couple of years. Vi Overlefter, I believe, makes up for that. I think it is a superb record, and it is one that I highly recommend, as you are about, and you're about to see why, as I'm about to lay a track off of the album on you. This is called Galskap. That was a track called Galskap off a record called Vi Overlefter by a band called Bizarrekult. Fantastic debut, and I will leave the link to their Bandcamp in the description of this podcast. Head over there, and if you buy yourself something and they ask you who sent you, you let them know that it was old Jackson at Into the Necrosphere. And then who knows, they might come on the podcast at some point in the not too distant future. But yeah, I really enjoyed that record. One I would certainly recommend, and one who is maybe a contender for the top 20 of 2021. Although the competition on that list, or for that list, is becoming ever more rigorous. Anyway, let's talk now about some news, and we will start with the latest headlines on Metal Storm. And we're actually starting off with some pretty sad news. Nasty Savage, Curtis Beeson is fighting cancer. So former Nasty Savage drummer Curtis Beeson, who played with the band between 1983 and 2012, is battling with a brain tumor. Obituary are or have started a fundraising campaign. There's a link in the description to the article where you can provide some support and throw a few ducats their way if needs be. But yeah, really, really sad news. And man, I one thing about growing older that does really sort of start to hit home. I think especially as you hit your 40s, because the older generation start to get sick, start to die off. A really good friend of mine, or one of my best friends actually, his father passed away over the weekend. I always had held his father in the absolute highest of regards. And very much in some ways he was a second dad to me. I'm not really sure what he's died from yet, but I did call my buddy on Saturday morning, and obviously he was. He was a bit, let's be honest, inconsolable. But yeah, it's a sad thing, and a really sad thing to see all of these guys that we grew up listening to and loving, getting sick. Obviously, thinking of Tom from Exodus as well. There's an article that I'm gonna touch on in a little bit about Alex Webster from Cannibal Corpse, who's also fighting something. All of my most positive vibes and thoughts goes out to Curtis Beeson and his family, and hopefully he gets through this. Stranger things have happened. I know of people that were diagnosed with another person that I know had Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I believe at one point was given a 12% chance of survival, and he pulled through. So it can be done. Hopefully they've caught this early, but still, really, really sad news. Moving on, let's see. Not a huge amount, actually, to be honest with you, at the moment. I don't know if everybody's taking summer holiday or it's this Mexican standoff ahead of, the bands being able to go out on tour, because it suddenly seems to have just slowed down to a crawl as far as, consistent slew of good releases are concerned. But anyways, Aborted have released their new single called Drag Me to Hell. It's off their forthcoming album Maniacult, which will be released worldwide on September 10th, 2021 via Century Media Records. Century Media, I don't know whether it's just the timing of some of their releases, but they certainly seem to be going headlong into the old extreme metal game again, which is interesting because as far as I recall, they're still owned by Sony Records. And I would have thought that Sony would have moved them away from that, but apparently not. Rebellion enter the studio. Rebellion, Brazil-based death metal operatives, have entered RR44 Studio to record their fourth album. The successor to the Hell's Decrees of 2016 is going to be released in 2022 on Agonia Records. I think this is a hugely underrated band, and if you're a fan of bands like Exclusion, you definitely want to check out Rebellion. Very similar sort of vibe, serious blasting and aggression, but they pull it off very, very well. And I, to be honest, I didn't spend a huge amount of time with the Hell's Decrees, but certainly a record I'll be checking out. And their older stuff is absolutely top notch. Carnifex, Deathcore Slammers, Death Snore Slammers. I think that this Carnifex record was, it says right there, was mixed and mastered by Mick Kenny of Vanel Nathrak. I personally think that he needs to stay away from anything core related, because I believe that it has an impact on his creative output. But that's just me. Let's see what else there is. Criminal, 9th studio record coming in October. On September 17th, Chilean veterans Criminal will release their new studio album Sacrificio, their first in 5 years. For a first preview of the upcoming music debut, a video for the new single Zona de Sacrificio has been unleashed, directed by Carlos Toro of Abismo Films. One of the guys from Criminal was on Alan Averill's podcast some time back. I can't remember his name, but I thought the conversation was super interesting, because being that it was Alan's podcast, they didn't exactly dwell on music for too long. They spoke about a whole bunch of other stuff, specifically some of the politics and things like that around Chile. Obviously, Chile used to be a communist country, and or at least under a dictatorship. But so it was a very, very, very interesting chat. Side note, sometime back when this whole Cuban business kicked off, they were protesting in the streets. As a joke, I posted I posted "Anti-Castro" by Brujeria on my social media, and interestingly enough, had several people unfollow me because they were so grossly offended by the fact that I would post something like that. In the face of people wanting their freedom and wanting their own personal agency to manage their lives however they choose. We move on. Power from Hell Inc. contract with Debumu Morty Productions. Debumu Morty Productions are pleased to welcome the Brazilian horde Power from Hell to their roster. The band will be touring Europe in October and are also working on a brand new album which promises to be different from what we have been used to getting from them. I don't actually know Power from Hell. I think the name is fucking cool, and Debumu Morty for me are alongside Season of Mist, Eisenwald, Van Records, and Apocalyptic Witchcraft. That to me is kind of the elite of extreme metal labels at the moment. And basically, when I see anything that has the Debumu Morty insignia on it, then I am automatically interested. So I'll certainly be checking this out. And as I said, what a fucking cool name for a band, Power from Hell. Let's see what else there is to talk about on the Metal Storms. By the way, the Debumu Morty guys, a while back I spoke to a couple of the label folks, and they were interested in coming on the podcast as well. So hopefully I can make that happen. I'd be interested to kind of hear their story, because I think that what they've been able to achieve over the last couple of years has been fantastic. And I mean, just their quality control alone is absolutely astounding. Now we went from a great name for a label to, a band, to one of the fucking dumbest names for a band ever. Mammoth reunited, ink deal with Golden Robot Records. I always think about it this way, right? If I'm on stage and I'm shouting my name, which most bands do, you play your first song, play your second song. We are Power from Hell from Brazil. People go nuts. Imagine standing on stage going, "We are Mammoth." I mean, it sounds like a fucking Monty Python sketch. But anyway, I don't know their music. I might be, and I might sit here and go, Jesus, I was very wrong about them. Call yourself whatever you want. I'm just not, I'm not convinced by the name, that's for sure. It doesn't really look to me like there's all that much else on the news front that's worth talking about, aside from the following. I think most of you are going to fall off your chair. Or actually, let me put it to you this way. If you have a coffee in your hand or a beer, put it down, because I don't want you to be choking to death because of something that I said. But I will confess that even I thought that this new Iron Maiden single was actually very, very good. I know I've not been somebody who's shown Iron Maiden an awful lot of love on this album, but that new single I thought was fucking brilliant. And I'm actually rather looking forward now to hearing Senjutsu, which is the title of the 17th Iron Maiden record, which will be out on September the 3rd through Parlophone Records. Apparently recorded in Paris with long-standing producer Kevin Shirley, co-produced by Steve Harris. Senjutsu is loosely translated to tactics and strategy. And it's got a very, very cool samurai-style piece of cover art, which, again, I think it strikes me as something a little bit different for Iron Maiden, which I really like. But yeah, that single, The Writing on the Wall, I thought was surprisingly good. And maybe it's because I've been an Iron Maiden cynic for such a long time. I had zero expectations of the of the song. I just kind of happened to put it on, almost because because I may or may not have wanted to make fun of it on the show. But like I said, I really enjoyed it. Sepultura unveil new single featuring Rob Cavastani as part of their special live album Sepulquarta, due on August 13th. Sepultura present another new single, this time the song Apes of God, featuring legendary Death Angel guitarist Rob Cavastani as special guest. I think those Sepulquarta, or the tracks on Sepulquarta, comes off of that Quarantine or those quarantine songs that they recorded live, all of which are pretty decent. I don't know whether it necessarily merits an album, but at the same time, if it's going to make them a bit of money, we obviously heard the other day from Derek. Seems like times are tough in the Sepultura camp. So, if it throws a few ducats their way, that's good. So let's move on to the Democrats' Guide to Rock Music, Blabbermouth. And we start with yet another Dee Snider story. Dee Snider claims Twisted Sister didn't get any royalty checks for record sales until more than a decade after the Stay Hungry release. Now, obviously, anybody who was around at that time knows how popular Stay Hungry was as an album. It featured "We're Not Gonna Take It" and "I Wanna Rock" amongst other iconic tracks. And tracks that certainly, like at the time that they came out, fucking anybody who was anybody was listening to it. So this is interesting to me. Dee Snider revealed that that Twisted Sister didn't get the first royalty check from its record company until more than a decade after the release of the band's most commercially successful album, Stay Hungry. Twisted Sister didn't start receiving any album sales royalties until we recorded Euros Are Hard to Find for the Strangeland soundtrack, he said, as transcribed by Blabbermouth. And in order to get the band to reunite, the record label wiped our debt out. So there's the interesting thing, or there's the rub. How much fucking debt must these guys have made with, I think Atlantic with the band, with a label that released Stay Hungry, but how much debt must they have been in to have sold millions of records and not have earned a cent worth of royalties from it? That being said, they were in debt. So, is it unfair that they wouldn't have received royalties for those albums if they owed the record label money? If you read and again, maybe I'm being too much of a cynic here, but if you read the headline, it would make it seem like these poor guys were, these poor young boys from New Jersey or wherever the hell they're from, were bamboozled into a evil corporate record label contract and, had no choice but to work for free. Doesn't really seem to be the case. Further down in the article, it says that Ahmet Ertegun, who is co-founder and president of Atlantic Records, according to Dee Snider, he's the man. He was sort of the Clive Davis of Atlantic Records, but he saw it and he said they paid enough. So we've been getting royalty checks, but the ones we should have gotten, those big ones, we never got them. As I said, you were you were in debt, buddy. And then Dee goes on to complain about Spotify, obviously. So further down the article, songwriters get songwriter royalties, and I was a songwriter. I got those because they are independent of the band and the record label. So I got paid, thankfully, for that. But then there's the mechanical royalties for record sales. In '97, we started getting royalties, and by what? When did Napster come out? 2001. So a few years later, people stopped buying records. Our royalty checks are a joke. Spotify pays nothing. Nothing! I like the two nothings in the article as well. Spotify pays nothing! Nothing! Like I said, I mean, I spoke to Katy about this, and I mentioned it obviously a while back when I spoke about the Derek Green interview. I do feel like until the music industry has a sober, or has a sober conversation with itself about what to do as regards the revenue model in music, I just think that nothing's going to change. You can't keep complaining about Spotify. Spotify made the best out of a bad situation, in my opinion. Napster was going to mean that everybody was going to get their music for free, and when Napster was foisted or bested by the many, well, I believe many court cases against them, they would have just been replaced by somebody else. So, Spotify is not a company that, maybe their top line revenue is huge, but their actual, net income is not massively high. They're certainly not a company I would bother investing in. And so I don't really know where all this extra money is that needs to go around. And then on top of that, any business sector or any industry has to evolve. And I feel like, there's been very little evolution in the music industry. All there has been is a bunch of goddamn whining. Again, though, I would love for somebody to talk to me about this and kind of prove me wrong, or at least give me some insight as to what could be different based on what's available. But anyways, Next up, Glenn Danzig's vampire spaghetti western Death Rider in the House of Vampires to open in US theaters next month. I cannot understand how it got a US theater release, but I do know that it will be utterly atrocious. We can see the thumbnail for the trailer says it all. But hang on, let's have a quick gander. I mean, it the first line, the cost doesn't seem too bad. The name's Death Rider, the guy says. I'm pretty confident this is going to be possibly worse than his previous movie, but anyway, it'll make for much hilarity. I wish he would stop with the movies and make some new music. So I mentioned a little while back on the podcast, actually not a little while back, earlier on in this episode, this article I'd read with Alex Webster. The headline here is Cannibal Corpse's Alex Webster opens up about his battle with rare neurological disorder. This was really, really sad to read. It says here, in a new interview with Bass Player magazine, Cannibal Corpse's Alex Webster opened up about his battle with focal dystonia, a rare neurological disorder that involves involuntary spasms in small muscles in the body. Focal dystonia is essentially an injury, but not the kind of injury that people would normally think of. It's not carpal tunnel or a tendon problem or something like that, he explained. It's essentially a neurological problem, and it happens in a lot of disciplines that require precise, repetitive movements, and not just in music. Asked what the symptoms were, Alex said, the normal finger-picking that I would do would have become very strained. It seemed as if my pointer finger would be going left instead of down. Then I noticed something that was going wrong. It was very confusing and frightening. I was like, what's going on with my right hand? Why isn't it behaving the way it's behaved for the past 30 years? He continued, basically the signals from your brain are going wrong on the way down to your fingers. Imagine your legs walking. What if the signal from your brain was telling both legs to go forward at the same time? That's not exactly what was happening with my picking fingers, but certain signals were definitely getting through and certain signals weren't. So here's something that I have spoken to privately about people in the past, because obviously, you've had a number of people in the metal scene develop neurological disorders or illnesses, whether it's brain tumors or whatever the case may be. And I do sometimes wonder if you're standing on stage and you're headbanging pretty violently, a day, night in and night out for a year on end. I cannot conceive of a time or a place where that would be good for you. And it's I don't want to. I speak out of complete ignorance here. I might be totally wrong. And if I am wrong, and somebody is an expert in this and can set me straight, then let me know. But I do worry sometimes that what the bands leave on stage when it comes to performance, actually impacts these poor guys when they get older. But the good news, at least here, is that Webster went on to say that he solved the problem by embracing a natural therapy based on cutting-edge research in neuroscience. I saw a specialist named Joaquin Farias who helped me out very much, and I also spoke with a classical guitarist Apostolos Paraskevas, and the bassist Scott Devine, who gave me tips on their bouts with us. So okay, maybe it's not down to the headbanging, because I can't imagine that Apostolos Paraskevas is headbanging night in and night out. It's something that can often be resolved, which is good news for anyone who gets it. You just have to work through it, learn what you need to correct it, and then take time to correct it. Regardless of the cause, I certainly hope that it is being corrected, because Alex is a phenomenal bassist, and the one time that I met him, I thought he was one of the nicest guys ever. It would just be such a shame to have a guy prevented from doing what he so clearly loves to do. I will do one more article. Philip Anselmo, Vinnie Paul was the best drummer I've ever played with. Man, I will tell you this much. If you go back and you listen to those old Pantera records, Cowboys from Hell, Vulgar Display of Power, and Far Beyond Driven in particular, Vinnie's drumming is absolutely extraordinary. And if you watch any of the live clips recorded around that era, I think it's, I think it just kind of is reiterated, just how good the guy was, and actually how far ahead of his time he was as well. Just has such a unique and loose and natural way of playing. And the interplay between himself and his brother, I think, was just absolutely awesome. And once again, I cannot help but want to extend a massive fuck you to everybody who hates on this band, because they don't fit into whatever woke category these people want them to fit into. Pantera was hugely influential on me, hugely influential, I believe, on a lot of people that listen to this podcast, and hugely influential on the music scene generally. And in terms of the contribution that it's made to the genre of metal, it is fucking massive. So if you don't like them, fine. If you want to try and lambaste anybody else who likes them because of politics, then you can go fuck yourself. But it says here, or let's say Phil is quoted as saying, "Yeah, man, Vince's unique feat on that damn song. So unique, so interesting." I think he's talking about Becoming, which is a fucking cool tune. "So interesting, so innovative. That dude was fucking tight and an incredible fucking player. Literally like the best drummer I've ever played with. And I've played with fucking great drummers, man. Blessed with great drummers. But Vince is no one's better than Vince. No way. Vince had his strong points and strong suits. But man, talk about adaptability too." Yeah, awesome stuff. Awesome. And it is such a shame, I think, that they never mended fences before Vinny died. I'm kind of it's probably a redundant comment to make, but either way, I don't think there's any doubt in my mind. I think Vinny and Dime are two of the very best to ever do it, and Pantera are a band who people will be discovering 40 years from now, 80 years from now, when they have long forgotten about all of the fucking Johnny-come-lately trash that has come since, including the music of Serj Tankian. Although, in fairness, a lot of people will... I as much as I'm not a fan of System of a Down, I think Toxicity as a record in particular is one that is going to endure for many, many decades to come. And Serj, unfortunately, will endure along with it. So System of a Down singer Serj Tankian has shared a snippet of the song Cyber Criminal from his next release, Cinematique. What a dick. What a dick. Okay, very last one. I said I'm going to only do another, one more, and I'm 3 in already. Metallica's Kirk Hammett on band's 40th anniversary. I still feel like we haven't really peaked. I would definitely say that, unfortunately, in Kirk's case, dementia is setting in because he clearly doesn't remember 1986, which is when the band did peak, and those glory days are well and truly behind them. Speaking of which, I believe that means the news is well and truly behind me for this week. That is also the end of this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in, and if you've stuck around until the very end, you are one of the few and the proud and are about to be gifted 2 surprises. Surprise number 1, next week's guest is Kane Cressell of the Amenta. If you've not yet checked out Revelator, it is available off of Deborah Morty Productions. It is, of course, the new Amenta record, one of my favorite albums of the year, and one that was absolutely made by the presence of one Kane Cressell, such a phenomenally talented singer, and a guy I've been dying to get on the podcast. So I'm really looking forward to recording that one. Also, I've been in touch with the lads from Voices. I'm not going to give away too much, but what I will say is there is something very, very big in the offing, which is going to surprise and delight the Into the Necrosphere audience no end. So keep watching the show, keep tuning in every week. Thank you so much for the support. I value it from the bottom of my heart. I'll be back next week with episode number 90. This week, I am playing out with a Voices track, and the song is called An Audience of Mannequins. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you bad motherfuckers again next week.